In this lecture, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about specifications. The primary specifications that are used to outline the requirements for ambulances is primarily the triple KA 1822F that was published back in 1974. There has been some revisions, and the latest draft is 2007. However, the federal government has decided that it will no longer maintain the triple K standards after September 2015. When you think about ambulance specifications, there's really usually two sections that go into outlining an RFP for an ambulance or specifications. And this really holds for both an ambulance or any other major request for proposal that you may put out. The first part is usually what's called the boilerplate. And this section includes the legal requirements of your organization, such as the county government's organizational requirements for contracting or purchasing, and it's just simply those legal requirements. It's usually similar for every different type of contract, regardless of what it is. Your legal department or your purchasing department will actually just hand that to you as something that needs to go in as part of the initial beginning section of the proposal, the RFP that you may be putting together. The second section is probably what you'll be more concerned with, which is the specific ambulance specification section, where you'll outline the technical specifications, the characteristics of the module, the chassis requirements, the features you want in terms of warning devices, light requirements, the painting, the striping, the design. All of those factors come into play at this point. Now, often you'll be able to get these from different places. In terms of developing the specifications, they can come from several places. It may be that you have a state bid generic set of specifications that have been developed. Sometimes those can be a good set of specifications and sometimes not so good. So you need to be very careful about using those types of specifications. Let me just add that the risk, again, as I mentioned, is not getting what you want, but or poor quality. But the benefit is usually these bids, such as state bids, are at a much lower price or cost to you than it would be if you individually set out to create your own set of specifications. So that's one of the reasons so many people actually consider it, is because they can buy at a slightly lower cost. Another way is kind of to develop your own specifications. And the thing that I found to be most useful is to take and do this method where you look at the best specifications from the different vendors and try to put them together. The only disadvantage to that is that, much like building a house without a general contractor, people that attempt to do that quite often don't get what they really want because they find that the pieces don't fit well together. It could be that the vendor for lights and the vendor for the chassis and just don't map up, or it could be that a specific component you want in the patient care compartment. It may be the type seating you want doesn't fit in a given cabin easily, so it requires extra manipulation to actually be able to utilize the type seating that you want. Well, often they can make those accommodations, but unfortunately those accommodations can be very pricey. So in doing that, you may want to start with one vendor and actually look at that vendor's specifications and see what it is that you feel that you absolutely can't live with, and those things consider changing instead of starting completely from scratch developing your own specifications. Another part of the specification process is to make sure that you give some thought to the performance aspect of the contract. Be very clear about the requirements in terms of what you expect from a given vendor. Be clear about the compliance statements, what they need to comply to, what you expect in terms of delivery of the vehicle. Exception statements. If there's exception statements, there's things you want they can't do. make sure there's agreement between both parties before that contract or before the development or building actually begins. Think about how you're going to evaluate the proposal and be very clear about that. That's very important when you're thinking about it in terms of a county or a regional or a governmental contract, because often the governmental contracts are required to go with the lowest bid. Unfortunately, the lowest bid may not accommodate you in terms of the things that you feel that you really need, that are the safest for your employees and that meet the needs of your service and your customers. So be sure that you are involved as part of that process of evaluating how the proposals will be evaluated when they come in if you're bidding or issuing an RFP for an ambulance or any other type of emergency vehicle. It often requires a lot of time to put into develop specifications and develop this performance aspect of the contract, but that's very important because if not, you may find that you don't get what you really need in the end, and it may end up costing you a whole lot more. Again, another way to think about developing specifications is a single vendor option, where you work with the vendor as much as possible to get what you like, and usually this works out pretty well. Most of the vendors are pretty good to work with they're ambulance manufacturers. Other things to consider: don't overload the specifications with bells and whistles. Sometimes you'll put the bells and whistles in to the extent of excluding things like performance aspects of the contract. You need to make sure that you get those important components in and then think about the bells and whistles. And remember that the big and shiny is great for a picture, but it may not provide you with the most efficient and effective service. Often I find that the more bells and whistles that are added, the less reliable quite often the vehicles are. Or sometimes you'll actually find that the less accommodating they are for the employees. They'll not like the vehicles as much with the bells and whistles that they thought they would like. The other thing to do is to think about asking your neighboring services. You can inquire about the level of service that they've got from a particular vendor, as well as the service of the vehicles. Finally, you need to think about warranty issues. If there's warranty problems, if there's failures, who will perform the maintenance? Will it need to go to a location that's a long distance away? I've worked with a couple services that would have to go a couple counties away to be able to get a vehicle back to the manufacturer to actually be able to work on that vehicle. Which was very costly in terms of the transport of the vehicle, having somebody to actually commute and take the vehicle to that location. But more importantly, it left that service without a vehicle for a prolonged period of time, which is definitely an issue. So again, all the way back to the previous lecture, when you're thinking about the type chassis, you need to keep in mind who's going to repair the chassis if there's any issues. So again, with warranty issues, think about who will perform the warranty work, how fast they'll be able to get it done, will you be given priority or not, and then check again with other services to confirm what you're told to make sure that actually is taking place. In terms of the things to consider, you want to consider the structural issues, the non-structural, the electrical issues, the paint, the heat and air condition. You need to make sure that you have all of those issues covered in the warranty, such that you don't get left trying to figure out what to do when something actually breaks. Well, we'll stop there and we'll pick up in the next lecture